Yeah. And real quick on a final note, I want to discuss. You mentioned Chapek and his like strong desire actually to like kind of dive into this metaverse.
Yeah,
We've heard a lot about this with Zuckerberg, and he changed the whole name of his company.
Oh yeah,
to Meta.
Yeah, how's that stock doing, by the way?
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. And Chapek, I've seen many interviews and press releases and whatever about Disney diving into this metaverse. What are your thoughts on that? We never talked about the metaverse. I mean, what are your
We never did talk about the metaverse, and that's because nobody really knows what it is. Nobody really knows how to talk about it. I don't know. I think the metaverse. I think there's an idea for the Disney experience, not just be limited for theme parks, right? Because Chapek has talked about. He's talked about, even in the last quarterly earnings call, he's talked about, well, it's a supply, the theme park industry is a supply limited business, right? Very supply limited. You can only build these parks so big. You only have enough land in which to do that. You can only add so many attractions. You get to a point where capacity is just capped. It's just capped. There's nothing you can do. That's just a hard value that you have to live by. Whereas Disney Plus is it's a limitless supply business where it's just how much server space do you have? That's really your only limitation. And from then on, you can provide content to just about everybody on the planet simultaneously. So can we take that, but with a kind of themed experience or virtual experience? Like, can we take the theme park concept or the kind of the immersion of a theme park concept or space and take it virtually to where it is, supply limitless, right? And I think that's kind of that might be the kind of goal with the metaverse. Obviously, what do they call them? They call them what's the friggin' tokens?
NFTs.
NFTs, yeah. Oh boy, that's a big thing right now. Obviously, these NFTs.
I'm too old for that shit. I have no idea.
It's just,
I'm so confused. But it's like
it's the worst part of the video game industry now becoming a thing with just about every industry on the planet. Obviously you have people who sell sports merchandise or work in the sports world thinking NFTs are going to be the biggest thing on the planet. Obviously, video games have been doing it for a while. They're getting into that space. And I think that might also, too, be a motivation with the metaverse, right? If you can have a virtual space where you have these kind of deluxe or premium virtual experiences, how do you outfit those spaces with NFTs that you own, that only you own, that people can see and interact with and stuff like that? That's really where that's going, right? It's another revenue stream.
Yeah.
But one that's not limited by capacity that you would have in a theme park setting. Just as an idea, what if you could take Disneyland and completely virtualize it?
Right.
And charge maybe by the hour or something, or maybe like a monthly subscription to that service to experience Disneyland in the comfort of your own home. That kind of thing. I mean, even for a theme park fan, that kind of excites me. But you can kind of see where that kind of thinking might lie and where it could go.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. The sky's the limit. I mean, think of it like Wreck-It Ralph in the real world. How exactly. How Ralph when he went in Wreck-It Ralph Breaks the Internet, he actually went into the internet. That's what this metaverse is. You're going to go basically into the internet. And what that means for Disney theme parks or Disney in general is limitless. Like you mentioned, like you can literally have a world where Disney can create a virtual theme park. They can sell you virtual merchandise. You can buy the virtual Spirit jersey. You can change your avatar.
NFTs.
Right? Exactly. I mean, and they can charge you real money for this stuff, and it's limitless. It's a whole other industry. I mean, it's like, it could be a potential cash cow for them if they do it right.
Sure.
So we'll see how that works out. That's the
caveat. You're right. It's all in theory that this thing is gonna really break out. Like, I don't. Did anybody see Ready Player One?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a little bit of a dystopic version, but what if everybody just kind of like the metaverse becomes the world in which they inhabit every single day, right? And we've seen kind of stuff like this with like WoW when that was super popular. I mean,
yeah.
I remember my brother playing WoW, and I mean, he would dedicate his entire life around it. He would he would dedicate times in which to raid and all that kind of stuff. It's just crazy. But when it comes to the Disney metaverse, if that thing is really going to bust out, if it's really going to be groundbreaking and breakthrough and really be as popular as some people theorize that it could be, do you want to be behind that 8 ball or ahead of it? That's kind of where Chapek's at.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really, it really does kind of show what kind of executive he is. He is not a coattail rider at all. He's probably just as innovative as Bob Iger in that regard. Forward thinking.
Yeah.
But without all the charm and charisma. Obviously. But he definitely has that sort of mindset of like, we can't be Disney circa 1977. We have to be on the forefront of all these new technologies. We got to constantly evolve our brand or we're going to die,
Yeah. And Chapek Bob Iger was really big into that. Bob Iger was like, hey, you know what? My industry of television went through an enormous change when I first started. And, some studios and stuff, they were behind the 8 ball when it came to that, when it came to, cable, kind of premium on-demand content and all that. The television industry changed from Bob Iger's time in it. And he was always very strict about like, hey, look, you want to be ahead of innovation rather than behind it. You really want to be, and Disney was just never nimble enough to be as innovative as I think Bob Iger wanted it to be. And Chapek's like, nah, like we're going to be a nimble company. I think that's why he's, he kind of used the pandemic in a way to do that, to become more nimble and flexible. But that's kind of where Chapek maybe one step ahead of Bob Iger in that, hey, if you're going to chase trends or if you're going to change with the marketplace, you have to have a more nimble and flexible company. And I'm going to do that no matter what. And the panty kind of fell into his lap and allowed him the ability to do that and trim a lot of the extra fat that may have been holding them back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even like in the video game industry, like I'm a huge Nintendo guy. I grew up, I'm not so much a gamer anymore, right. But like when I was growing up, I was a youngster in the 80s, and I was all about Nintendo. I was all about Super Nintendo. I got the Sega Genesis. I had the Game Gear, all that stuff. I was all into the gaming, right?
Wait, hang on.
What was that? There was a point in time though where Nintendo was sort of and right now Nintendo is doing fantastic. They're a very, very strong brand. But there was that little window of time where that transitioning period was occurring between like the cartridges and the CD or the DVDs or whatever they call them, right? And Nintendo kind of dug its heels in, and they didn't really want to do the whole like CD thing. They were really wanted, like it was tradition. It's the cartridges. It was the cartridges. And they really let kind of PlayStation and these other kind of companies sort of, not take control, but sort of kind of, gain ground because of that. Because they were so stuck in what it used to be. They didn't innovate. Now, Nintendo has come out of that and they're very strong right now.
Oh yeah.
But that's just kind of an example of how if you dig your heels in too much to the nostalgia and you don't move forward, it can be a detriment to your overall business.
Well, I mean, think about, if we want to stay in the video game space and we talk about Wreck-It Ralph, right? The arcades to the consoles. Right. I mean, arcades used to be huge back in the 80s, back in your time, OG. No, joke.
Yeah.
No, but that was a huge thing. That was a huge source of revenue. You had all kinds of arcade machine developers putting out games and so forth for these arcades and stuff like that. And once the consoles kind of came out, which Nintendo helped spearhead a lot, with Atari and everything else, that became a business by which maybe you are supplier capacity limited, to now we can just produce consoles for distribution all across the planet and really have no limit, the limit just being production. And that's the kind of shift in the market that was huge, that took the arcade industry by surprise, as we saw elaborated in Wreck-It Ralph, and as Nintendo has successfully capitalized on, right?
Right.
You don't want to be behind when that kind of a shift happens. So at what point do you invest in things that could be revolutionary but might not be? How much do you invest? How much do how much do you pour in to getting those things established? I mean, Mark Zuckerberg's finding out right now that you might have an idea of where you're going, but you have shareholders to follow back on. And I think the metaverse, as Mark Zuckerberg has touted it, I think he said like it won't be profitable for like 10 to 15 years
God.
or something. Just this like way long thing, and it's like we need returns now, kind of thing.
Or at least within a reasonable amount of time. I mean, that's 15 years is crazy. Like even the streaming wars, like these companies understand it's going to be 3, 4, 5 years maybe. But you're talking 15 years. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it might even be that figure might be inaccurate. I haven't looked at. I'm just remembering numbers off the top of my head. That might be inaccurate. Might be longer.
Wow.
And it's like, it's just, that's a lot of money to sink into for something that might turn into something later. That's going to be something that Chapek, obviously needs to kind of balance, right? But you can kind of see like, hey, arcades used to be a thing and now they're not. When the internet took over, in the e-commerce space, think about how much it's changed our life even in the last 3 years. Right. I mean, things that you wouldn't think imaginable, hey, I can get McDonald's delivered, through this third party. Like, how does that work,
Right.
Like, and you can kind of see how these industries change. Now, you have to be careful because, and that goes into the D plus conversation, right, with the shareholders and their view of Disney stock, because, Peloton, right, was one of these companies that really took off during the pandy, as people were locked in their homes and kind of people were working on themselves and had nothing else to do, right? But Peloton wasn't able to extend that success out, and that's really what's gotten them into trouble, right? Whereas Disney has been able to successfully, keep subscribers on Disney Plus, leverage their content in a way that no other, even Netflix can, right? Netflix can't add a I don't know the Witcher ride in Netflix land, right? They can't do that, right? But Disney can,
right?
With the Mandalorian and anything else, they can leverage their brands in a way that other studios cannot. They can do all this kind of stuff. So Disney's been quite successful in doing this historically, and they've been quite successful in kind of balancing their existing revenue streams and also with emerging revenue streams. And when it comes to theme park space, like we said before in the show, that's where Chapek is. That's where he's going. That's where he feels his legacy is. And I think he's right on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I completely concur with you. Now, one scary thought that came into my mind, and I don't think this is happening anytime soon. Soon. But you mentioned like arcades kind of became obsolete. I can't even find an arcade anymore. I don't even know what it would be at anymore. I mean, they're gone, when consoles came on. It's a scary thought to think of, but like when you're dealing with like the metaverse and virtual theme parks, is there a day when the physical theme parks, which would be the arcade, basically, fall to the wayside, become obsolete because the virtual theme parks are so much more compelling and changeable and adaptable? Ooh, scary thought. I don't want to think about it.
Hey,
it's a possibility,
I think this will put your mind at ease, though. With the arcade space, right? You're talking about physical joysticks affecting things on screens, right? That's a pretty easily translatable thing from somewhere where you go to something you can have in your home.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
Theme parks are completely different. I think, it was some of the Imagineers working on Rise of Resistance actually said it, where it was like, guests want physicality. Guests want the physical thing. They want to see that AT-AT in a physical space and look up and be completely awestruck by it, right? They were kind of taking shots at Universal for being so screen heavy at that time. Universal's changed course, good for them. But the physical space, walking through an environment that is, not through the looking glass of a virtual reality headset, I think has its own unique appeal and will always be appealable. As far as how much that's worth, as far as, who really seeks those things out, it's always going to be an open question, but I think they'll always have a market. I think those things will live on. I think they will be eternal, as long as that physical space is of high quality, by which you really can't even approach in a virtual reality space.